Hello, dickheads. Richard here. Hope you liked the last episode about Jeanette DePalma. Pretty convinced might have been the police had something to do with it. That being said, while recording with RJ, had a vape with me, and I definitely smoked too much of the vape, and there was enough left of that script. We'd already been there for 2 hours. It was a long time, so I figured, you know what? I'm gonna give you guys the rest of the theories just for fun, something to do, something to get out there. I'm going to Jamaica, so I'm not going to be able to release or get everything edited out in the meantime. So I'll give you a little bit of a bonus episode on a couple more theories about Jeanette, and a couple of them are serial killers. Pretty wild stuff, or wannabe serial killers. Anyway, we'll get into it. But yeah, so here's a little bonus episode for you, me by myself. By the way, thanks for everyone that's gone out there and given us some reviews and some ratings on the old iTunes or Spotify. It's really awesome that you guys are interacting. Can you also, if you get a chance, just to like make comments on episodes on Spotify or whatever you want to do, just keep on pressing those 5 stars, 4 stars, whatever. If you think we deserve to have a 4 star, that's cool. I'd prefer the 5 stars. They're nicer. Thanks for listening, everyone. Keep on getting the dicks out there. Show them your privates and say, what do you think of that, Dick? Who knows? They might be like Oscar at the end of the episode, say RJ is their favorite. Poor decision, but true.
An elite team of private detectives.
What if balloons are aliens? Maybe that's the key component we're missing.
Cover-ups.
John's guilty.
Mysteries that need to be solved.
Maybe Mormons need mountains.
Richard, shut up.
Here comes the theory. So we last left off. I'm telling you, I was blasted. So we were on Tommy Rillo. We just did Tommy Rillo. Sure. Tommy could be the guy. He's driving around. He knew the places. Maybe. Okay, so back to Jeanette's other theories. There's a couple more theories here. One is a serial killer, never convicted serial killer, I guess, but pretty sure a serial killer. I don't know. I feel like Death on the Devil's Teeth really made him sound like he did a few things extra than what he was convicted for. But like he was definitely a psycho. So this is a pretty fun theory. This was a weird case that got linked together afterwards, not during the actual case of this guy. Okay. It's linked together by the assistant Union County prosecutor named Michael J. Mitzner. Now, there was another murder in August 1972 in New Jersey, 8 days after the disappearance of Jeanette DePalma, actually, and 8 miles away from the Devil's Teeth. I don't know what that means. I don't know why that's eights or like that, but 8 days and 8 miles away. The woman who was murdered was named Joan Kramer. On August 15th, 1972, Joan and her boyfriend Bernard were having a party at Joan's childhood home on 65 Crest Drive in South Orange. Joan was a rich kid, okay? And their house was great for parties. Fantastic for parties, actually. Party that night supposedly had over 30 people in attendance. The couple, during the party, I guess, got into a fight at some point, and Joan just wanted to be by herself, so she sneaks away from the party. And then she walks to a phone booth, not that far away. She calls her friend in New York to complain about her stupid boyfriend, and then got off the phone and went to a cab stand. A woman bystander saw a car pull up and asked the girl if she wanted a ride. And the girl said, yes, I want to ride to the top of the hill, basically where she lived. And that was the last time anyone ever saw Joan Kramer. When Joan didn't return home, his family went to the police, and guess what the police did? They gave the old wait 24 hours spiel. She's an adult, I guess. Still, I don't know. I guess back in those days, people don't have cell phones. It was really hard to get a hold of people. So maybe I don't know. I don't like the rule, especially with kids. Kids mostly, because like kids, they're gone for 24 hours. You know they're in peril. It's not like an adult who can like go to New York City and just hang out for the night with their friend. You know, like I get the difference there, I guess. So no one hears from Joan for 3 days. Everyone's kind of panicking, and then a man calls the Kramer residence claiming he kidnapped Joan. I don't know if this is true or not, but he asked for 20K in ransom. The father, Julian Kramer, Joan's dad, he decides he's going to pay. Joan actually had lupus, and without her medication, she was going to be dead anyway. So what's 20K? My daughter's going to die. So they bring the money to the spot, agreed upon. No one shows up. Then they go the next day. Kidnapper still doesn't show up. Kidnapper calls again, said, "Hey, you never dropped off the money. If you don't do it tonight, I'm going to shoot Joan." That's the end of her. So bring the money. Meanwhile, they already brought it twice, so they don't know what to think of that. And Joan's like a rich kid. So when this story broke, and with also with like a ransom demand, this obviously was better news for the newspaper than Jeanette's case. So her disappearance took up a lot more of the news coverage than Jeanette did. The most Jeanette got was like by Satanism. Joan was like, rich girl in peril, everyone listen. Rich girl with lupus, not lupus. I don't even know what lupus is. So I know it's autoimmune. What does that mean? Anyways, 10 days after Joan was last seen, her body was found by a 17-year-old named John Hassenauer. Hassenauer? Hassenauer? By John Hassenauer. Him and his friend were taking a hike along a footpath near Elizabeth River. It was just after lunch, and I'm sure their planned picnic was ruined. This location, where her body was found, was only 6 miles away from Devil's Teeth. So, according to the autopsy, she had been dead for at least a week. The only thing missing from her person was a necklace and shoes. Missing a necklace, huh? Kind of like Jeanette. Or shoes. Jeanette had flip-flops, maybe. Anyways, Joan was found strangled, much like how it could have been the way Jeanette died, even though there's no real determination of that. Joan, on the other hand, we know she was strangled because her windpipe was collapsed and her hyoid bone was cracked. She was petite, straight brown, parted down the middle, hair, young lady. She looked very similar to Jeanette, to be honest. When the police sketch of the man who picked up Joan near the cab stand came out, everyone in South Orange knew right away who it was. It was a dead ringer to a guy named Otto Nilsson. Otto Neil Nilsson was born October 13th, 1934 in New York. He had a wife and 5 kids and settled down in South Orange, New Jersey. The Nilssons were a popular family in South Orange. Now, there's a story where everyone's like, oh, he was like, Otto Nilsson used to be like a big man. He'd like have speeches at like outdoor activities with the neighborhood. He was that guy, and like people loved him. And there's two stories that I kept hearing. Two stories. There's one story that I heard in two places, and it's in the book, Death on the Devil's Teeth. And I just found them weird because they were put in the book, but for some reason, it made everyone in the town like make Otto think he was a good guy because he would do this. Whenever their kids had loose teeth, they'd be like, "Go see Mr. Nilsson. He'll pull it out for you." So he's like a good guy. He'll pull out your kids' teeth. That's not weird. So he pulls out the teeth for the kids. Why does that make you a good neighbor? It's so weird. Anyways, everyone said that the Nilssons were good neighbors. They liked having them in the neighborhood until about the 70s. And I don't really know what happened in the 70s, but I'm sure it was something. But it led Otto and his wife to start drinking heavily. So heavily. I'm thinking it's money or like I don't know what Otto's job was, but it just sounds because some stuff he says later makes it sound like he was like hard up for cash or whatever. I don't know. Him and his wife start drinking heavily, heavily to the point where neighbors were noticing how the house was in neglect, or the kids didn't have like supper or lunch. It's suppers, I guess, but they didn't have like lunch at school, or like parents would never be home and the kids would be like ratty looking. Then Otto starts to abuse Carol, his wife, to the point where police were frequently called to their house. Carol didn't live with it. She called the police. She asked for a divorce. And in 1972, they'd been divorced for a couple years at this point. Otto was still obsessed with her, though. He'd moved in with his parents, but he was kind of still obsessed. And he went to his ex-wife's house and he just beats her there at her own house now. You know what I mean? Police called again, of course. And apparently, this story, it took 3 police officers to wrangle him up. Crazy drunk ass 37-year-old Otto Nelson. He was a big dude. Then August, then in August, when the police sketch started to make its way around South Orange, people knew to stay away from Otto at this point. And if they did see him, they should call the South Police Department. Like 72, he was like the bad guy in the neighborhood, like the scary guy. And then people start to think about Otto for other things that happened. There was another woman who was murdered within a 3 mile radius of where Otto used to live in 1966. That was Carol Ann Farino. She had left her waitressing job around 8 p.m. on November 3rd to walk her half-mile home walk, but never made it home. Around 8:45 that same evening, a neighbor called the police saying that there was a body of a woman in her driveway. It was Carol Ann. She had a silk stocking tied so tight around her neck that it needed to be cut before they could do CPR. And she was pronounced dead 20 minutes later. Her shoes were missing. Also, her pants and her underwear were in place, but they say her girdle was around her right ankle, which interesting. The police had nothing to go on that one, but after Jeanette and Joan, people started to notice similarities between these murders, like the missing shoes, just like Joan for one, the strangulation, like both of them, maybe Jeanette, not exactly sure, could be. So people start thinking about him for Carol Ann. After Joan's body is found, Carol Nilsson starts talking to her neighbors and saying that she suspected her husband of being the ones that killed her. Even Otto's 10-year-old son had suspicions about his father being a killer. One of Neil's friends, Neil was their 10-year-old kid, remembers going with Neil to his house so that Neil could confront his dad about this big secret he had. And then I guess Neil's friend stayed downstairs while Neil went upstairs to go confront him or talk to his dad. Then when he disappeared to the other room, the friend said that he heard a scuffle and he was a little worried, so he went in to go check on his friend Neil. Otto Nilsson was on top of his son Neil, looking like he's about to kill him. Once Otto turned his head and saw it was his little friend there, he let Neil go and they escaped basically unscathed. So this police sketch of the guy who picked up Joan at the cab stand is out for almost 2 years. And then Otto does something really stupid. He breaks into his ex-wife's neighbor's house thinking that she and his 5 kids would be there. Now I say neighbor's house because he assumed that she was home and she wasn't there, so he's like, where else could they be? She wasn't home, she was on vacation. But he knew that sometimes he didn't know they're on vacation, but he knew that sometimes he'd go over to the neighbor's house and they'd go play cards and the kids would hang out. So he bursts into the neighbor's house. He figures out pretty quickly that his ex-wife and kids aren't there. He's aggressive. He kicked in the door at a neighbor's house at like 2 in the morning, you know. Police are called obviously instantaneously, and he starts to like try and fight. And the 19-year-old son of the man that lives there at the Greg's house next door, the neighbors, he was a star wrestler in his high school, and he just put Otto in a chokehold and he held him until the police arrived. I can't imagine how fun that would be to just like choke out somebody who's breaking into your house before anything bad happens. He must have felt like king of the world. That's a 19-year-old kid going back to high school. That's a story. That's a crazy story. So Otto gets arrested this time pretty easily because he's in his chokehold. He's probably passed out like doing that breathing thing they do. He's getting booked, and this other detective sees him coming in and he looks at Otto and he says, this guy looks very similar to the police sketch of that person that we're trying to talk to in the Joan Kramer murder case from a couple of years ago. So this cop eagle-eyed him out. Then he starts looking into Otto Nelson. He's like, who the fuck is this guy if he looks like that? So he starts looking into him. In the meantime, Otto's booked, charged with assault, ordered to undergo a 15-day psychiatric evaluation at the Cedar Groves Overbrook Asylum. So he gets 15 days in the psych ward. He is pretty psycho. I don't know if that's an excuse to bust into someone's house, but he did that. He did it. So, but mere days after his release from the asylum in the nearby township of North Bergen, a couple teenage girls go missing. 16-year-old Lorraine Marie Kelly and 17-year-old Marie Ann Pryor go missing after a day trip at the mall. Their parents notice them go missing when they don't come home from the mall that evening and go to the police. And guess what the police tell them? You gotta wait 24 hours. Come on. Now, I'm not on your side on this one. These are 16-year-old kids. Like, I guess the 70s were a different time, but like, still, man, they're still not you're still your responsibility. I don't know the policeman on this one. I don't like that. Such a dumb rule. I'm glad it's not like that anymore. If anybody like If your kid goes missing, you call the police and make them find your kid. Like they will not tell you 24 hours anymore. That is an old thing. Anyways, it's worse for these girls too, because after their 24-hour like wait period, they still told the parents like they're probably just runaways. We have to investigate her boyfriend from out of town because she probably ran to him. He lives in like wherever it's across the country. So she probably ran away to him. So they spend a lot of time doing that instead of like looking around for some sort of like person who could have done this that's not out of town. Or I guess they're missing. So they could have been looking for just clues of where they went anyways. A couple days after their disappearance on August 13th, there's a report that Marianne and Lorraine were both seen at a restaurant at 5:30 a.m. in Union City. Cops think to themselves, see, runaways. They were seen, they're at a restaurant at 5:30 in the morning. It makes sense. So they get on the news and publicly say to the media, there is no longer any reason to fear the girls are victims of foul play. End quote. That's a quote. There is no longer any reason to fear that the girls are victims of foul play. Perfect. That statement didn't age well because just one day later, on August 14th, two nude and deceased bodies of Marianne and Lorraine were found laying parallel to each other on a grassy area near a parking lot at an apartment complex in Montvale. Each had a length of cord loosely wrapped around their necks. Something like the cord from Blinds or something like that. Strangled, though. Similarities. But if the same guy's killing all these girls, is he just escalating with two at once? Not only that, there were two different wounds found on these teens that weren't present on the others. There were small burn marks on the body of one of the teens. It doesn't say which body. And the fact that he took two. So that's a big difference if you're a serial killer, but it is an escalation. Lorraine was apparently killed 6 hours before Marianne as well. So he killed one, then the other. So did he make the other one watch? Is he getting that crazy? If this is the same person? Well, during the months since Otto's break-in at his old neighbor's house, police were looking hard at him for Joan Kramer. They brought a picture of him to the lady who claimed to have seen the man who picked up Joan the night she disappeared. This lady swears up and down that the man she saw was Otto. A judge issued an arrest warrant for Otto on January 10th, 1975. Police weren't looking at Otto for Carol Ann or Jeanette because the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office was completely unaware of those cases, which I find insane. And they're little, remember I said they're little counties 5 miles from each other? This is not a, the internet made things so much harder for criminals, man. It's fun because like still to interdepartmental stuff, you can still get mix-ups even to this day, but I can't imagine the 70s it was good at all. Nowadays, I'm pretty sure there's like a national database for violent crimes. Like I don't know if Canada, but US for sure. They didn't have that in the 70s. You could like kill someone in the 70s and just go to a different, like go to Idaho. That'd be the end of it. You know, people wouldn't even know you did anything. Maybe not. Maybe I'm being facetious, but like nowadays you can't even, nah, you're followed. Good luck. Jeanette's case too was a little bit different than these other cases that were coming up, if you think about it really, because the prosecutors wouldn't have been, that shouldn't have been on the radar. I knew it was like a satanic kill, you know, that wasn't the same, the way it was, it wasn't framed the same way, but in today's eyes, with the evidence we look at now, it's like probably the same guy, you know what I mean? Even so, Jeanette was considered an OD case as well in some circles, so that could not help her case either. Here's the thing about Otto Nilsson. Otto, he did own a Buick at the time of Joan's murder, and that was the kind of car that got picked her up with. But he sold it right after Joan's disappearance, so nobody could check the vehicle for anything, which is weird in itself. Why would you sell it? It just seems the timing doesn't seem great to sell that car. And what's the suspicious stuff? The one of the cops said he saw him at a stoplight. He recanted his testimony. Not lots of evidence, a lot of like circumstantial, I guess, but like anyways, the prosecution fucks this case up. Otto Nelson ended up getting not guilty plea, a verdict, sorry. So did Otto kill Joan Kramer? Probably. Did Otto kill Jeanette DePalma? Not sure if he did he kill the other girls? What I can tell you is that with a short fuse like his, he could have killed someone for sure. And if people are saying it's a dead ring or two, I know it's police sketches and they're like terrible half the time, but like maybe, you know, I'll tell you a couple things here. Jeanette, when she was murdered, he lived near her and she hitchhiked around. I don't know, he could have picked her up if that's what he was doing. There's some speculation for me for fun. This is the best part about the show, just make up shit. I don't make up lots of stuff. My goodness. I make up fun little side stories, but I tell you the facts where I can find them. So here's a little speculation from my end. She hitchhikes all the time. He lives in the same area. Maybe he picked her up. Maybe he's going to take her somewhere, wherever she wanted to go, but maybe she said something he didn't like. He was a short fuse, And maybe he just decided he was killing someone today. Whatever it was, he maybe just drove in a different direction then. And she knew that you weren't bringing me home because it's not the quarry's not down this road. So she was apparently a firecracker. So maybe she tries to get away, jumps out of a moving vehicle. He chases her down in the middle of the bush, strangles her out, takes her necklace for a trophy. Wants to take her shoes, but she has these dirty, dirty flip-flops. Just leaves her body out there to rot. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. What I do think is it's pretty convenient that we blame this guy, Otto Nelson, like just because there was a necklace missing, I guess, and it was around the same time. I guess. Like I don't think so. So here's a little thing about Otto Nelson. So even though he got not guilty charges, he didn't get to get away with being a psycho for very long. So in September 1976, a very, very hammered Otto went into a veterans hospital armed with a high-powered rifle looking for his wife and kids. Dr. Herbert Jean-Louis convinced Otto, under the threat of death, with a gun pointed at him, to join him in another room in his office so they could speak privately. Gets him in that office. The FBI calls in, talks him down. It takes them 6 hours before he can put down the rifle, and then the police arrest him. Otto was completely fucked by then, rambling about conspiracies against him, and government kept his kids away from him, and there's satellites in my brain, and their aliens are telling the government, the shadow government, what to do, man. Stuff like that. Getting crazy. He did get sentenced for this crime. Judge Felix Martino ruled that Otto was suffering from a, quote, disease of the mind, and unquote, there's potential for him to hurt himself and others. Judge Martino declared him legally insane, and Otto Nelson was committed to a psychiatric hospital until further notice from the court. And I don't think he ever got out. I think that was the States. I think here he probably would have gotten out. He'd probably be out in a week. Here's some good pills. Get out. So that's Otto Nelson. There's a little similarities between all those deaths. Those girls kind of died at a convenient time, but I mean, no proof of any of that. Like maybe Joan, like maybe it's not even. It's just it's super convenient that he looked like but that's it. I don't blame the jury. I'm glad he got his psychoness got put down, But there is another serial. That's the serial killer. I don't think it's great. There's another serial killer theory though. Here comes Richard Cottingham, the torso killer. Cottingham actually apparently confessed to the murder of Jeanette DePalma while in jail. Time frame matches. Police have no solid leads that could prove that he's involved in the case. Mine is just like him saying it, and the fact that Cottingham's been confessing quite frequently, and I think 4 or 5 of the cases he confessed to actually came to fruition, and he could prove he's the one who actually did. So maybe he did do Jeanette. Wasn't really familiar with that area though, so that's my only like gripe with the whole thing. Most of his murders happened in Nassau County, New York, and that's about an hour and a half away. To know where to go, like drop Jeanette's body off, you probably would have to been from there. Like the quarry isn't like super visible, like on the highway. I guess you could see it, but it's still remote and specific, like where he's going. You never know. Like a killer's gonna find a nice spot. I'm not gonna do a full episode on Richard Cottingham today. I just gave you one. Otto Nilsson will never do. Richard Cottingham's torso killer's got a lot. It's another torso killer, so we might have to do a more modern torso killer one day. Pretty gruesome dude. But we're gonna do a different episode because he's got a lot to him. Maybe I'll do it on unethical or wherever, but yeah. So, anyways, my point is he confessed. Did he do it? No one can really prove it, but like that's also very convenient as well. Take it for what you will. So here's a couple more theories that were rolling around the internet as well. Nothing to do with serial killers now, but this one's kind of awful now. I get it's that the parents had something to do with Jeanette's murder. This is the consequence I was talking about when I said that the De Palmas listed her as a runaway rather than a missing person to the police. Since the family called her a runaway, that must mean they know something. They knew they ran away. Maybe they know something about her death. They were acting weird when people asked them questions. They were resigned to the fact that she'd passed. And they knew weeks prior, in their mind, God came down and told them. Did they know something? Maybe she wasn't into drugs at home. Maybe she OD'd at home. Maybe mom saw her OD at home and they came up with a plan. The weird De Palmas. Maybe they called in like a mafia cleanup squad to put away the dead body. You don't know. And we know they only listed her as a runaway so they could get her name out there before the 24-hour waiting period. The fucking thing I hate, right? So this may add speculation. I don't think these parents are involved, but she said weird shit. Like Florence said, being at peace with the death. When the police first interviewed them, they were being like very short with the questions. Remember I was saying that? Like the answers, but like they're grieving weird. They're just weird people. That's all, man. Get over it. 1970s cops, they're weird ass fucking people. Just weird people love their kids too, you know what I mean? Just as much. Just a weird Italian Catholic weird. They're weird, that's all. So the parents aren't involved. I don't think that, but speculation's been thrown around the internet for that. There's another theory here, which I think is probably the most, if we're really gonna talk about what's most likely, this one is what I think it is. So there's a rumor going around that the day Jeanette went missing, there was a party at one of their friends' house named Donna Blattis. It's actually Donna's older brothers, Mark and Richard, that were having a party, but Donna was kind of like, I don't know, she's in high school. Like, I'm gonna invite some friends too. Now, I don't know if I said this before, but the Blattis mother, I don't know what her name was, didn't like Gail or Jeanette, Gail Donahue, Jeanette's best friend. She was like old fashioned, like Gail and Jeanette would bring boys over to their house and they smoked weed and they had that like reputation of being like wild girls. So the mom didn't like them. And then August 7th, Donna was grounded, so she wasn't supposed to have friends over, but she did anyway. And apparently at this party, this is the rumor, Jeanette had a bit too much of alcohol and drugs, and she did so much that she overdosed and died. And then when she dies at these kids' house, the Blattis house, the two brothers panic and they drive her to the dock of the Devil's Teeth and dump her body. Overdose could have been the way she died. There was no broken hyoids to get rid of that theory, but no gunshot, no choking, you know what I mean, all that stuff. And then the medical examiner didn't really test for narcotics or barbiturates, just heavy metals and alcohol. So maybe she did die with an overdose. Florence certainly thought the Blattises had something to do with her murder, with her daughter's murder. She said it in later times, later interviews that the Blattis boys had something to do with it. They also claim like Cindy DePalma or one of the DePalmas. I could be wrong. If Cindy, if you're listening to this, I'm not trying to throw you under the bus. This is all just rumor. I don't believe any of this. It's rumor that Cindy said that the Blattises didn't even like Donna Blattis didn't even go to her friend's funeral, like Jeanette's funeral. A funeral had over 500 people at it. I don't know if you could see everyone, and if you did see everyone, would you remember? It's a pretty stressful day for you. Cops never really followed up on these rumors, according to Officer Ed Kish. He said that it was pointless to question the Blattises. Apparently, they are friends with the police chief of Mountainside, and the police chief would have covered it up. There's no point. We can't talk to them. That's what Officer Ed said. Like, come on, dude, go talk. Just do your job. Do your job. Kish also admits that this theory seems to be that it is his favorite theory, Officer Ed. I think this is for the book. During one of the interviews for the book with some friends of Donna's, one of them says that Mark Blattis claims to have seen Jeanette the day she died. So there's like a telephone game of rumor going on here. Officer Ed thinks that after all these years of investigation, Mark still had something to do with her murder. Gail disputes this theory, claiming that they never went to party at the Blattises, and if they had gone, she would have been there. So maybe it's just Gail didn't get invited, or it was an impromptu thing, or whatever. But apparently, there's no party at Blattises, and this rumor is just a rumor. If you think about this case, it seems you went up there yourself. Did you go up there with someone? Maybe, but I don't think someone carried you up there. Were you put up there at gunpoint? Maybe too. I don't think anyone's lugging you up there. Another theory is that she actually overdosed at the summit of the hill. This one makes a little bit more sense to me. Like, even if Mark did, like, she did die at the Blattises, it'd been hard to carry her up there. Like, cops couldn't even, they did like pull themselves up. Like, it was hard to get the body, like, it was super hard to get the body down. And they had like a fire extendo ladder, and it was lighter. It didn't even have a full arm, you know? Like, I think maybe she went up there with someone she knew, had some drugs, party a little too hard, OD'd. Whoever was up there with her, I don't think she was by herself. Maybe she was just, maybe it was suicide. Maybe it was that. Maybe she did go by herself, but she went up there OD'd, and no one found her for a couple weeks. And if it was another person or maybe another couple people having a party up there, you would have seen in the police photos that there was a party, but it didn't look like that. It really didn't. It looked like just the middle of the bush. So either she went up there by herself, took a bunch of pills, and called it the end, or she OD'd with somebody else. I'd like to say the cops had something to do with it. Like, I'd like to agree with my super high Richard statement from before. And I kind of do. I still think the cops may have had something. But I do think that's a nice, quiet, secluded place to go if you're trying to pick up a girl or if you're trying to unalive yourself. If that's what we're allowed to say now. I don't know. Could be one of those. What do you guys think? Let us know. If you guys have an idea what happened to Jeanette DePalma, you guys solve it this time. You tell me, and I'll read it on the show. You tell me what your solves, what you guys think the solve should be for every episode. This one specifically. What do you think happened to Jeanette? I gave you all the information. What are you gonna do with it? Come talk to us. Thanks for listening, everyone.
I just watched Private Dicks and I think RJ's the funniest.
What? Come on.